So this is the second part of your review. It only has 2 problems on it because it came from a different program. And basically, you've got the angles in the first quadrant, so you just draw it there. Sine is 3/5, so it's opposite over hypotenuse. Theta always comes out of the center. When you find the third side, it's a 4 with a 3, 4, 5 triangle. And they want to find sine of 2 theta. And sine of 2 theta is 2 cosine of theta sine of theta. So that's 2 times the cosine of theta is 4/5, and the sine of theta is 3/5, so it's 24/25. Sine is positive when you double that, so it's still positive. For cosine, here the cosine is 12/13, and this side will be a 5. Sine of 2 theta will be 2 times cosine of theta sine of theta. The cosine of theta is 12/13, and the sine of theta is 5/13. And so that equals 120 over 169, and that is your answer. So that first page was the last 2 problems of your packet. And now we're going to start from the first page. It just copied wrong. So sine of 165, you're going to use the sum and difference formula for this. And you got to find 2 numbers that added together equals 165. And that would be 135 plus 30. So the way the rule goes, it's going to be sine of the first guy times cosine of the second guy, same sign, and then sine of the second guy times cosine of the first guy. And then you're going to go on your unit circle and you're going to find the sine of 135, which is root 2 over 2. And the cosine of 30, which is root 3 over 2. Plus the sine of 30, which is 1/2, and the cosine of 135, which is negative root 2 over 2, and those get multiplied. So that's going to be root 6 over 4 plus minus root 2 over 4, which is root 6 minus root 2 over 4. You can check these by finding the sine of 165 and then keying in this ugly radical thing, and it should give you the same ugly decimal. Now with cosine of 165, it's the same problem, but it's cosine of 135 plus 30. And that's going to be cosine of the first guy times cosine of the second guy minus sine of the first guy times sine of the second guy. And here the cosine of negative 135 is negative root 2 over 2. Cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2 minus sine of 135 is root 2 over 2. And sine of 30 is 1/2. So that turns into negative root 6 over 4 minus root 2 over 4, which is negative root 6 minus root 2 over 4. This next one, you're going to just look for what rule this is. And if there's a plus in the middle and 2 cosines and then 2 sines, it's going to be the cosine of the first guy minus the second guy. And you can look at your rules. So 161 minus 71 is the cosine of 90, and that is 0. And that is your answer. When you look at your rules, if you have cosine plus sine, it's the same. It's cosine of the first guy minus the second guy, which is the cosine of 90 again, which is 0. Now if you have cosine minus sine, that's going to be the cosine of the first guy plus the second guy, which is the cosine of 180, which is -1. And this is sine, cosine plus cosine sine, which is the sine of the first guy plus the second guy, which is sine of -x. These are pretty easy if you use your formula sheet. So don't get these wrong. These are pretty easy. So this is sine cosine plus cosine sine again. That's sine of the first guy plus the second guy, which is sine of 3 theta. And the last one is cosine cosine plus sine sine, which is the cosine of the first guy minus the second guy. And that's going to be 1 minus 6v is cosine of -5v. So for half-angle identities, you have to pay attention to the formula. And the formula says that this is going to be the same. If I double 22.5, this is going to be the same as the sine of 45 divided by 2. So that means that 45 becomes your alpha in the problem, and then you can put it in the formula. So the formula for sine of theta over 2 is 1 minus cosine of alpha over 2, all under the radical. And these are the hardest ones, but you just have to pay attention to the radicals. So we have 1 minus cosine of 45 is root 2 over 2 over 2. And then we're going to change that 1 to 2 over 2 minus root 2 over 2, all over 2, and put it all under the radical. And that becomes 2 minus root 2 over 4, because this turns into a 1/2 and it goes below there. Well, the radical of 4, the square root of 4 is 2, so he can come out, but the top cannot. So this is going to be your final answer. And your last one is the same. This is the same as sine of 135 over 2, so he becomes your alpha, 135. So it's going to be the same formula, 1 minus cosine of 135 over 2, all under the radical. So it's 1 minus root 2, negative root 2 over 2, because the cosine of 135 is negative root 2 over 2. So minus minus becomes a plus, all under the radical. And this turns into 2 plus root 2 over 2 over 2. And remember, this turns into a 1/2 and goes up here. And we have 2 plus root 2 over 4, all under the radical. Well, the top cannot come out, but the bottom does come out as a 2, and that is your final answer.